Today we're exploring one of Jesus' most striking healing miracles, not because of its scale, but because of what happened after the healing was complete. It's the story of 10 people desperately in need, one moment of divine compassion, and a response that reveals something profound about human nature and our relationship with God. The story is found in Luke 17:11-19, and it takes place as Jesus is traveling toward Jerusalem, knowing what awaits him there. But before we dive into the narrative, let's understand what leprosy meant in the first century. Leprosy wasn't just a disease, it was a social death sentence. Those afflicted were required to live outside communities, to cry, "Unclean, unclean," when others approached and were cut off from family, worship, and normal human contact. Imagine the isolation, the shame, the hopelessness. These 10 individuals had lost everything that made life meaningful in their culture. Now, picture this scene. Jesus is traveling along the border between Samaria and Galilee when 10 lepers approach, but not too close. They maintain their distance as the law required, but they call out desperately, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." Notice something remarkable here. This group included both Jews and Samaritans. Normally, these two groups despised each other. But suffering has a way of breaking down barriers, doesn't it? Their shared affliction created a community where racial and religious prejudice had once divided. Jesus doesn't touch them. He doesn't speak elaborate words of healing. He simply says, "Go, show yourselves to the priests." This was the standard procedure. Priests were the ones who could officially declare someone clean and restore them to society. Here's where faith enters the picture. These 10 individuals had to walk away, still showing symptoms of their disease, trusting that healing would come as they obeyed Jesus' command. And it did. Luke tells us that as they went, they were cleansed. Can you imagine that moment? Years, perhaps decades of suffering, isolation, and shame gone. Skin restored. Hope returned. The possibility of embracing their families again, of returning to normal life, of being human again in the fullest sense. But here's where the story takes its crucial turn. Only one of the 10 returns to thank Jesus. Only one. Luke is careful to tell us this man was a Samaritan, a double outsider in Jewish society, both because of his former disease and his ethnicity. Yet he alone recognizes what has truly happened. He doesn't just acknowledge the physical healing, he sees the hand of God at work. The text tells us he returned, praising God in a loud voice, and threw himself at Jesus' feet in gratitude. Jesus' response is telling. Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner? Then Jesus says something profound to the grateful Samaritan. "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well." But wait, weren't all 10 healed? What's different about this one? This brings us to our central question. Why did only one return? What does this reveal about human nature? And more importantly, what does it teach us? First, consider the power of immediate self-interest. 9 of the 10 were so focused on their restored lives, reuniting with family, returning to work, resuming their place in society, that gratitude became an afterthought. They got what they desperately needed and moved on. How often do we do the same? When prayers are answered, when crises pass, when good fortune comes our way, do we pause to acknowledge the source? Second, there's the matter of spiritual blindness. 9 saw a medical miracle. Only one saw the hand of God. They experienced healing, but missed the healer. They received the gift, but ignored the giver. This speaks to a deeper human tendency. We can become so focused on the blessing that we forget the one who blesses. Third, cultural expectations may have played a role. While the text doesn't explicitly tell us the ethnicity of the other 9, we can reasonably infer from the context that at least some were likely Jewish. Jesus calls the grateful man this foreigner, suggesting the others were not foreigners from a Jewish perspective. If some of the 9 were indeed Jewish, they might have thought, of course God would heal his chosen people through his Messiah. But the Samaritan, clearly identified as an outsider, had no such sense of entitlement. His gratitude was pure, unencumbered by assumptions about what he deserved. It's worth noting that we should be careful not to assume more than the text tells us. Luke only explicitly identifies one person's ethnicity. What we do know for certain is that suffering had brought together people who would normally have been divided by social and ethnic barriers. A powerful reminder that human need transcends our artificial divisions. Finally, there's the issue of complete versus incomplete healing. Jesus told the grateful Samaritan that his faith had made him well. The Greek word is sozo, which means not just physically healed, but made whole, saved, restored completely. The others received physical healing, but only one experienced the deeper transformation that comes with recognizing God's work in our lives. This ancient story holds up a mirror to our contemporary lives with startling clarity. We live in a culture of entitlement. We often view good health, prosperity, relationships, and opportunities as things we've earned or deserve, rather than gifts to be received with gratitude. The 9 lepers represent our tendency to take blessings for granted once we have them. We struggle with distraction. In our fast-paced world, we can easily become so consumed with managing our lives, pursuing our goals, and dealing with immediate concerns that we forget to pause and acknowledge the good things that come our way, let alone their ultimate source. We can experience God's work without recognizing it. How many answered prayers, narrow escapes, unexpected opportunities, and moments of grace pass by without our recognition? We might attribute everything to luck, hard work, or coincidence, missing the deeper spiritual reality. We need community that encourages gratitude. Notice that the one who returned was the outsider. Perhaps he had less to lose by taking time to thank Jesus. Or perhaps his outsider status made him more aware of grace when he received it. But here's the hopeful truth. When we do return to give thanks, when we recognize God's hand in our lives, we don't just acknowledge past blessings. We position ourselves to receive deeper spiritual healing and transformation. Like the grateful Samaritan, our faith makes us truly whole. The story of the 10 lepers isn't ultimately about ingratitude. It's about the difference between receiving a gift and being transformed by recognizing the giver. 9 were healed. 1 was made whole. 9 had their problem solved. 1 had his life transformed. Today, may we be people who not only receive God's blessings, but return to give thanks. May we be the one who sees beyond the gift to the giver, who understands that every good thing in our lives is an expression of divine love and grace. The question isn't whether we'll face difficulties or receive help along the way. We will. The question is whether we'll be among the 9 who move on, or the one who returns with a heart full of praise and gratitude that opens us to even deeper healing and relationship with God.